Hi guys, so welcome back, welcome back. We finished module 1, so I need you to do the exercises and post it in the WhatsApp group. Now if there's some things that you do not still understand or you need a clarification, please post your questions in the group. So now we begin to module 2. I am so excited about module 2 because we're going to be learning more concepts into module 2 right now. So I hope you have your writing materials. I hope you have your writing pad. And so let's begin. Now for module 2, like I said, we're going to be looking at the project management life cycle. So what do we mean by project management life cycle? So we have different types of cycles. We have the project management life cycle, we have the project life cycle, and we have the product life cycle. Now, for the project management life cycle is just the project management of the project. So it means that you are actually managing the project now. So it means the life and death of the project. So from beginning to the end. So it looks at the whole process. So that is what the project management life cycle. Now, for the project life cycle, is referring to the work on the project. So what are the work that you're going to be doing on the project, such as construction, such as digging, such as uploading? So what are the constituents of that project? So that is what project life cycle entails. As we go further, you are going to be seeing more description of what we mean by the project management life cycle and the project life cycle. Now the product life cycle is the overall life of the product, now from initialization to rollout and to taking out of the service or of the product. So I give an example here. So if you introduce a new product into the market, now the beginning of that product and the end of that product, you see that often now and then companies comes out with like a new model. Okay, for example, like a car. Now they come out with a new model car. Now for the old ones, they stop producing the old one. So the beginning and to the end means is what is the product life cycle. But the act of creating that model, let me say that car or that product now, is what the project what management life cycle. And the work that you do to actually achieve that is what the project life cycle. So I kept a picture here. So for example, now let's like for the manufacturing that I was talking about, let's look at it. If you are developing a new product, so these are the areas of what the project development. So it talks about the you initiate it, you plan it, you execute it, and you close it. So this is the project itself. Now what about the operation? When you go into like your mass production, you produce it. Now what about when you are taking out the product from the market, you are delisting the product, you want to produce a new modern one? So this whole entire process is what the product what life cycle. So it starts from when you initiate the product to the rollout of the product and to what to the taking out of the service. So that is so I need you guys to understand this concept so that you can know the difference between the project management life cycle, the project life cycle, and the product life cycle. Now, next is the project management principle in proper. Now, for project management, according to PMI, we have 10 knowledge areas and 5 phases. So the phases are also referred to as the stages. They're referred to also as the processes. So you need to be familiar. You need to get yourself acquainted with this knowledge area. So the first knowledge area is scope, is time, quality, human resource, communication, risk, procurement, and integration. And this is you need virtually all of these areas. So you need to be able to know, okay, how do I manage my scope, how do I manage my time, my quality, human resources. This one depend on, okay, am I acquiring a team? How do I manage the team? Communication, how do you want to communicate to your sponsor, to your stakeholder? Risk, then we start looking at the risk management. How do you manage risks? Procurement, how do you buy things? How do you sign your contract papers? Integration, this is now the overall management now of the entire knowledge area. So these are what we are going to be covering bit by bit. Now for the process stages and product phases, previous slide I talked about the project management life cycle. Now it comprises of the process phases. So we have 5 process phases. So you call it stages, you call it phases, or you can call it process. It's what initiating is the first one, planning is the second one, executing is the third one, monitoring is the third one, and closing. So it means that for a proper project, you must go through these 5 stages. You must go through these 5 processes, meaning you must initiate it, we must see the planning, we must see the execution, we must see the monitoring, and we must see the closing. So in the next slide, we'll be diving deep into each of these process stages. Now, project management life cycle, like I said, is a process of completing work on the project. So it means that from the beginning to the end, from the point in which you initiated the project to the point in which you close the project, it's what is the project management life cycle. So for the project life cycle, like I said, is the work that has to be done on that exact project. Now, one thing I need you to realize, for every phase, meaning that if you finish the initiation phase, there is something that we refer to as a phase gate, meaning there is a gate, meaning we must be able to review all that you have done in the initiation phase. Now, I'm going to be explaining what are the components of each phases later on. Now, for each of this cycle, we have what we call as what a phase gate, a phase exit, or a kill point. Now, it's used to carefully evaluate the project progress, because we don't want you to move to the planning phase and you will now start finding out that, oh, there were some things I did not consider. Why, starting up the project, why signing on the agreement to, to undertake this project. So you have what a mini review at this point in order to ensure that you've put all the deliverables, all the nitty gritty, they are well taken care of in order to guarantee the success of the project. So what do we mean by the initiation phase? Initiation phase is when we define the project. We talk about the business case, the project constraint, and the problem statement. So why do you want to do this project? So, and this is where the project manager is being employed, is being given the brief. So as a project manager, you must be interested in all these 5 phases. So if you are to undertake a project, you must see the initiation document, you must see the initiation file, you must have a project brief. Okay, what is this project about? What is the justification for this project? Why is this project important to my sponsor or to my client? Because if you do not understand your initiation phase very well, there is a tendency that you are going to run into problem. There is a high tendency that you are going to have issues during the course of the project. So it's at this point that we state all the deliverables. It's at this point that we state, okay, what is the objective of this project that we are trying to undertake? So once we leave the initiation phase, then we move on now to the planning phase. The planning phase comes into what? The detailed planning. So what are the planning that takes place? What are the estimation? What are the scheduling? How do we want to execute this project? How do we want to plan it? How do we want to carry it out? So it's at this planning phase that you do a whole lot of planning, that you try as much as possible to plan the work, to plan the project in such a way that you can execute it within the project constraint. Earlier in module 1, I shared with you the triple constraint, which is the time, the scope, and the budget. So you must be able to spread it out here in the planning phase, how you want to execute this project. Why for the executing phase? Now we're talking about the project team. So now you have your team together, meaning you are acquiring people. So probably you are not an expert in that field or in that project. You can start getting in your experts, start getting in your specialists, you start forming your team. So it's actually at the execution phase that you start doing the development and the management. Now for the monitoring phase, we have controlling risk and management. So it's at this monitoring phase that you start controlling the output of the work. Now, paravention, if there are some things that you did not take note of during the course of the planning. So it's at this monitoring phase that you start checking out the variance. Is there a variance? Is there a difference between what we actually planned compared to what we are seeing? Why at the closure phase? That is when you close the project, you review it, and you discuss the lesson learned. So for project management life cycle, these are 5 important phases that every project is expected to undergo. Like I told you about project management, is a structured approach. So even if you want to use it for your personal life, you have a goal that you want to achieve, it must follow these 5 basic steps, meaning you initiate it, you plan it, you execute it, you monitor it, and you close it out. So that is the project management life cycle. Now, for the initiation phase, now, this is the output of the initiation phase. Now, I talked about phase gates and I talked about kill points, in the earlier slide. Now, for the initiation phase, the output of this phase is a project charter. So meaning we must see a document like this, like a brief that tells us, okay, what is this project's name? What is this project about? Who is the project manager? Who is sponsoring this project? Who are going to be the team members? What is the business case? Now, what is the deliverable for this project? So if you take, okay, probably like you're in the construction phase and you get a contract to construct a road. Now, meaning your project's name is that, okay, you are constructing a road linking probably one state to the other. Now it gives, so you tell us, okay, what is the project description? Now, who is going to be responsible for that project? That's in terms of payment, in terms of sponsoring the project. So that is your project sponsor. Now we want to also see what is the expected goal and deliverable. Okay, probably there have been so many issues with commuting on that route. So the sponsor is trying to ensure that there is an ease of passage for people moving from one end to the other. So we need to be able to see what that project is expected to deliver. What is the justification for that project? Now, what is the statement of the scope? Now, scope now means that, okay, what are we covering? What are we doing? Are we constructing the entire road? Is it a bridge that we are constructing? What is the diameter? So that is where the specification comes in. Now, what is the length? What is the width? What is the breadth? So that is where the scope of the work uh, comes in. Then the roles and responsibility. What is the role and responsibility for individual member? What are the risks? What are we expected to achieve? Now, like I said, a project must have smart goals. You must have what? Smart goals. Because if the goals are not clear, if the goals are not smart, as a project manager, you are definitely going to run into issues during the course of that project. Now, objective of the project, like I said, the project should be realistic and follow the SMART protocol. Now, as a project manager, you should be aware of this SMART protocol. So what do we mean by this SMART protocol concept? The S there signifies specify, meaning objectives should be specific and written in clear, concise, and understandable words, term. Now, measurable, you need to know when you have successfully completed the task. Acceptable, meaning we should be able to agree with what with stakeholders. Realistic, your project should be realistic. So if they are giving you a project and you don't see how that project is going to come to light, as a project manager, it's at that point that you need to start asking questions, start seeking for clarification. Because if your project does not follow this SMART protocol, then the client might just be asking for something that it's never before done, or something that cannot even be achieved. So you must follow the SMART protocol. So the project must follow this framework in order to guarantee the project success. Now, planning phase. So we've left the initiation phase. The next phase is the planning phase. Now, according to Benjamin Franklin, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Now, this planning phase is responsible for more than 80% of why major projects fails, because it's at the planning phase that you incorporate, you look at everything, you consider a whole lot of fundamentals. So you see the project management plan, it interacts with cost, with scope, with human resources, with cloud, with quality and risk. So it's at this phase that you actually plan the project. It's at this phase that you determine, okay, what is going to be the estimated cost, how should we communicate, what is going to be the timeline. So here you provide a rough estimate of all these other areas. So the planning phase incorporates what all the requirements, all the areas that is needed to carry out the project. Like I said, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So your planning phase is one of the critical, important phase for a project manager doing the course of a project. And for those that are seeking for certification, this is one area that you really definitely need to know about. So for the planning phase, these are all the components of planning: scope planning, schedule, resource planning, budget, procurement, risk management, quality, and communication. So these are all the phases that you have to go through when it comes to planning phase. Now, for example, when we talk about application now, in terms of scope planning, how do we plan a scope? How do we, execute um, the scope of the client or the sponsor? Now, there are techniques, there are templates, there are standardized template that you have to follow, and I will be sharing that as we progress. Now, for scope planning, we have what we call the work breakdown structure, meaning we must be able to see the detailed planning of how you want to execute uh, this project in terms of the scope. Now, for the budget planning, we should be able to see how you are specifying the budget, what is going to be the cost, what is going to be the estimated cost at the end of that project, what are we going to be spending. So it's good to have this holistic view of this when you are starting a project, and that's why the planning phase, it's a very important phase. So planning phase, like I said, is to establish the business requirement, establish cost, schedule, list of deliverables, and delivery date. And it's also establish the resource plan. What will you be needing? What are the things that you'll be needing? When do you need them? How do you need them? And it's also the time. So once you have this planning phase, you are going to share it with your sponsor, which is, it could be your management, it could be the person that is paying for it, so that you can get the approval. Because there is nothing as bad as you have a robust plan and the sponsor or the client is not in support of your plan. So it's at this point that you make all the changes, that you make all the list of things that you want to do or achieve at this planning phase. Now, this is a picture why projects fail. Now, if you do not do your plan very well, if a plan is not well thought out, this is exactly an indication of what is going to happen. Now, this is what the customer explained. The customer said, "This is what I want." Now, this is how the project leader understood it. Now, look at the analyst. So the analyst is also part of the project manager's team. This was how they designed it. Now, by the time it gets here, the programmer that that wrote it, okay, in terms of service. So this is relative to a service now. This was what the programmer decided to do. Followed by the business consultant. You can see what the consultant designed. Now, how was the project documented? This was how the project was documented. How was the operations installed? Now, that's the operation arms now in terms of those that were to install that service. This is what they did. Now, how did they charge the customer? This was how the customer was charged. So this is in relative to cost management now. How was it supported? What support did they provide, after the closure of it? This was the support. Now, but this is what the customer really needs. Now, you can see from here to here, it's a totally different thing, meaning that you've completely changed the customer specification, the customer deliverable. And that is why the planning phase is very key. The planning phase is very essential, because it's at this planning phase that you obtain approval, you discuss with the client, you are able to find out, because sometimes in reality, some clients they are not specific. They just, okay, they say something today, tomorrow they say something, they're not really sure, or they don't have the capability to really express what they want. So at every stage, you must be able, as a project manager, to deliver up to the expectation of your client, of your sponsor. So this is responsible for a lot of reasons why projects fail. This is just an illustration to 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 buttress the planning phase. Now, for the executing phase, so we've talked about initiation, we've talked about planning. So the third one is executing phase. Now, for the planning phase, you are working the plan out. So for the executing phase, you are working the plan out. You know that for the initiation phase, for the planning phase, I mean, you are planning the work. Now, for the execution phase, you are working the plan out. So it means that the plan that you've actually put together, this is now the time to actually execute it. So, and the output of this execution phase is what? Work results. So we have what? The project execution phase. So this is what the project execution phase entails. Now, monitoring and controlling. Now this is when during the course of it, so now monitoring and controlling phase sometimes is also done simultaneously with executing phase. So if doing executing, you should also be monitoring, you should also be controlling. So if you are seeing variation, you are seeing changes, what you plan is not what is being executed, those are variations, those are differences. Now this is the phase in which you start adjusting, in which you start making correction, because you know your end goal is to deliver a project or a service or a result. Now it's at this phase that you start monitoring, you start controlling, you start trying to adjust in order to what achieve the goal that you set out to uh, at the beginning of the project. And also at this phase, it's also important when you start having variation, when you start having differences, you need to keep your customer, your sponsor, you need to give them early feedback, so that if there are changes that you need to make, it has to be done on time. And you have to give them regular feedback too as well, so that everybody is on the same page within your project. Now for the closing phase. Now the closing phase is now the point in which you have completed the project stops, and so this phase take care of the contract and the project closure. So for the contract closure, verification of completed work, payment, sign off. Now a very important phase of the closure of the closing phase, which I must say, is the lesson learned. Oftentimes project managers do not sit down together with their team to review the project, what went well, what went wrong, what could we have done better. So it's very important, because this the feedback or what you receive from your team from this lesson learned analysis is what you are going to use to improve your next project, in how you are going to deliver your next project. So it's very important that you have a proper closing phase and you integrate all that is needed. So this is the exercise for module 2. So please, I want you to drop your answers in the group. Let me know each of all this for these questions, what would be your correct answer. So please let me see your answers in the group. So, and with that, we've come to the end of module 2. So thank you so much for that.